MontPIRG's Fall Final Theme Forum for the municipal candidates here. It's kind of ironic that we have our Fall Final Theme Forum on the first day of winter. So, my name is Hunter Bighorn, and I'm currently a student here at the U of M, while also serving as the vice chairman for MontPIRG. And I wanted to give special thanks to the American Constitution Society and the Climate Response Club for providing questions for our candidates this evening, as well to the Blewett School of Law for hosting this event for us. They've done us a great favor. And just to reiterate, both MontPIRG and the ACS are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization who are simply just excited to educate voters on everything candidates. And then, also, this presentation is being recorded by the Missoula Community Access Television as part of a media assistance grant donated to MontPIRG by MCAT. So, more or less, you can stream us afterwards. So, moving into it, and I guess the favorite part about this is the rules. So, for the candidates, this is a forum. This is not a debate. Keep your responses constructive and on your own vision for Missoula. For the audience, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. And then so, for the time limits here, for the city council candidates, you will each have a minute to introduce yourselves, and you will have 3 questions, and you will all have a minute response to those questions. So, without further ado, let me introduce our moderators. For MontPIRG, we have our 2 interns, D'Artagnan Kaufman, and then Nico Jacob. And then for an ACS, we have Noah Gibson. And so, without further ado, I'll turn this over to Noah, and he'll bring us into it. And also, thank you for everyone for turning out. We do appreciate this.
Good evening, and once again, I'd like to echo Hunter's sentiments. Thank you all so much for coming. It's a real pleasure, and we're looking forward to hearing your vision for the city. Just kind of as a brief reminder beforehand, Hunter told you about the 1-minute time per question, but to kind of assist you in timing your response, we'll have some hand signals. So either one of these two gentlemen on my sides will be giving you a signal. It will be C at 30 seconds, this at 10, that when you're done. So they'll be kind of guiding you along the process, and if you have any questions at any point in the panel, we'd love to help you out. That being said, I would like to see you all, introduce yourself to the crowd, and we'd like to start over here on the left with Mr. Nelson.
All right, can everyone hear me okay? Is the mic on? If not, I can probably project enough. Well, thanks to MontPIRG and ACS for hosting. What an awesome first day of winter to be here with you all at the Flannel Forum. My name is Eric Melson. I'm running for my first term, Missoula City Council Ward 1. That's the Rattlesnake neighborhood, the north side, the heart of Missoula, kind of downtown area, and also the Canyon River Golf Course in East Missoula. I'm running because I love this place. I have gained a lot from living in Missoula, and honestly, I just want to give back to the place that's given me so much. I also am very interested to learn how local government can be a force for good in people's lives. I'm really trying to treat this experience as almost like a master's degree in local government. I don't know everything about how we can be more efficient with our budget and how we can tackle some of the biggest issues. I have some ideas, but I really want to learn from you all, as well as from the experience that I've gained in my professional and personal life. Try and put that to good use, working with you all to make Missoula even better than it is today. So thanks for having me.
It's like a talking stick, wow. My name is Gwen Nicholson. I'm also a candidate for Ward 1. This would also be my first term. I want to say thank you to everybody for coming out. Thank you to the law school for hosting this. Thank you to MontPIRG. I'm a lifelong Missoulian. I'm a graduate of the University of Montana. I graduated from the School of Journalism here in 2021. Since then, I've worked as a journalist. I've worked as a policy worker for the Montana Budget and Policy Center. And really what I want to do is try and bring some more marginalized communities, people whose voices haven't traditionally been represented in City Council, to the forefront and make sure that we're incorporating all of those voices into the decision-making process as we move forward, and making sure that we're building a Missoula that works for everybody in our community and kind of crosses lines and crosses boundaries to bring people together. Thank you.
I'm Timothy Garrison. I am running for the 2-year seat for Ward 2 that was vacated by Mayor Hess. I am on the North Side, West Side Neighborhood Committee Leadership Team. We serve about 3,000 people in the North Side neighborhood under Ward 1, and also serve about 5,000 people in the West Side neighborhood, mostly under Ward 2. Although the line between Ward 1 and Ward 2 are growing and continuing to shift, we'll see how that looks in a few years. I might be in Ward 1. About 9,000 residents total on the neighborhood team that I represent, so not a huge jump to 13,000 constituents in Ward 2 that I'd be representing. I previously served as the chair for the North Side, West Side Neighborhood Committee Leadership Team, but resigned the chair position when I decided to run for City Council. I still serve on the team, but not as the chair. Candidacies can be a distraction from the committee's service there. And thank you.
Thank you all for hosting this, and thanks everyone for attending. I really do appreciate you all wanting to be better informed or informed voters. My name is Mirta Becerra, and this will be my second term serving on City Council. It has been a true honor to serve my community and represent Ward 2. It's a job that I don't take lightly. I do a significant amount of work to be well prepared for the decisions that we have to make. I work really hard to communicate with my constituents, and I used to be a land use and transportation planner for the city of Missoula and Missoula County, and I believe that commitment and experience is what we need right now because we're facing really challenging issues in our community. Thanks.
My name is Rebecca Dawson. I am running to represent Ward 2. This would also be first term for me. I am running because I'm not happy with my property taxes. And so I would like to serve on council to see what different voices, different opinions, different perspectives can do to help alleviate some of that and maybe shift the way we spend the money in Missoula, maybe bring some different efficiencies and awareness to where the money is going. I am from Western Montana. I grew up in Bitterroot Valley. I've been back in Missoula for about 8 years now, and I thank you all for coming and hosting, and I hope this will be a great evening for all of us.
Hey everybody, thanks for having us all in here tonight at the most fun themed of any of the forums we've done so far. My name is Sam Kula. I've been in Missoula since I was 6 years old, moved here from Mineral County where I was born. I attended Missoula County Public Schools all the way through. Followed that up with my undergrad at the University of Montana where I studied geography as well as Spanish literature. Then I worked for a long time until I came back again to earn my master's degree in education, which we finished up during COVID. I am a gig worker. I work a lot of different jobs in this town to make ends meet. I raise a family, and part of the reason that I'm running is because I want to make sure that folks who run this town and the people that give Missoula its character and make it what it is can afford to live here. I don't want to see Missoula turn into a bedroom community, and I don't want to have a situation where people are commuting in. I got the sign. Done. All right.
Can you hear? Can you hear? Hello? That's better. Okay. My name is Amber Sherrill, and I am the current City Council representative for Ward 4. I have lived in Missoula since 2000, raised 2 daughters here in the university area that went to Hellgate High School. I like to trail run. I like to ski. I've spent most of my life in different capacities in conservation as well as business. I do believe that municipal government should serve everyone, and one of the things that I have been really amazed with kind of stepping into this seat is the decisions that we make and how much they affect every single person in this city. Honestly, I didn't follow it as much as I should have, so I'm really happy to see all of you here. The major issues that I am hoping to continue tackling on council are housing and climate change mitigation. I have served the Climate Conservation and Parks Committee, as well as I'm on the Renewable Rate Option Team with Northwestern Energy.
Time goes fast. Hi, I'm Alan Alt. I'm running for City Council Ward 4, and part of Ward 4 is the University housing along South Avenue. The reason why I'm running is, number one, is the property taxes, which affect the rental units, because it's passed on to anybody that's renting, and our housing situation and the homelessness situation, which is also driving up crime, things like that. I moved here also in the year 2000. I've attended here, I've taken several classes, I got a 4.0 average, but that's why that gives me the right to wear this hat. So, and I'm really thankful for all of you being here and putting on this forum. I hope it'll be educational for everybody. Last thing, I've done a lot of things for the community. I've been a CASA volunteer, Big Brother. I've been on the planning board, and my time's off. Thank you.
Everyone hear me? Yes. Thank you. So I'm Bob Campbell. I'm running for City Council in Ward 5. That's the southwestern part of the city. Includes South Hills, Linda Vista, Maloney Ranch, and a little bit of the Franklin Ford neighborhood. And I'm running to bring 32 years of public service I have to bear. I've done 5 years also in the land use planning field as an assistant planner in Gallatin County in the early 90s. So I have experience with land use, zoning review, zoning updates, floodplain administration. And then I decided to change careers, change gears, and got into law enforcement. And I've done 27 years worth of law enforcement in western Montana, 23 of those years with the Missoula Police Department. I retired just this last December as a sergeant with the Missoula Police Department. So yeah, looking to bring all that experience to bear. You know, I've raised 4 kids here in Missoula since moving here in '99 when I started with MPD. And you know, I look at the experiences they had growing up, and you know, I see the opportunity for that kind of experience that my kids had kind of slipping away, and I think, you know, there's an issue with property taxes, an issue with housing affordability, and we need to tackle it.
Hi everybody, I'm Linwood Fields, and I just want to start off by thanking all of you for being here. It's really important to be part of this, and I hope afterwards you come and talk to me one-on-one. A little bit of background, I'm from Whitefish, Montana, and I went to school here in my undergrad. I got my teaching degree here, and then I spent 8 years out of the country in places like New Zealand and China. And finally, when I was in New Zealand, I thought, nope, Montana's the place for me. So I came back and I got my master's here in digital filmmaking, and have been doing filmmaking in the state of Montana for the last 12 years. And one of the biggest reasons I got into wanting to run is that I helped with legislation called the Media Act for the last 8 years and helped bring over $200 million of total economic spend to the state of Montana. Wanted to know this side, the political side, so I decided to run, and it has been quite eye-opening just running the last 4 months. And with that, I'll pass it on.
Great. Good evening, everybody. I want to say thank you for everybody being here, and thank you for our organizers, and a wholehearted thank you from this farmer for choosing farmer attire. This was an easy find for me. So my name is Sean McCoy, and I am running to represent Ward 6, which is in the River Road neighborhood, as well as the Franklin to Fort neighborhood, and then as they've changed the boundaries, we kind of push out to Mullen Road out by the university area and Walmart and whatnot. So my background is that I'm from Idaho, Pocatello. I went into the military shortly after high school, went into wildland fire, culminated as a smoke jumper, went to college, activism, all sorts of fun activities through that period, graduated from the University of Montana here, and got into farming. And I feel like I've spent my entire life in public service, and that's why I would like to run for city council, So I'm going to bring all that experience to bear on City Council. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sandra Vasica. I am the incumbent for Ward 6. I also wanted to thank this attire because as an outdoor enthusiast, it is lawn drawing season apparently. So it was a very easy choice to make tonight to on what to wear all day. So I am on the Business License Appeal Board. I'm the Vice Chair of Public Safety, Health and Operations. I'm on the Local Emergency Planning Committee. I'm on the Missoula Valley Transportation Committee, and I'm also the unofficial liaison for the Missoula Human Trafficking Task Force. And I have a husband who graduated from Hellgate. I graduated from Sentinel. We have a 2.5-year-old little boy, and we are renters. And I think that being a renter is a very important voice on this on the City Council. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running for re-election, because I have a lot of work that I have not done yet. Because it takes about 2 years to get your feet underneath you after a fire hose of information. I'm also running because I really believe in lower taxes, and I also did the Citizens Law Academy in about 2016 in the classroom below us.
All right, thank you all so much for sharing with us. We really appreciate kind of getting to learn more about you. I feel like that's something that is often missing from some of these panels. Now as we begin the questioning, I think we'll start here from the opposite side and work our way back over. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Nico.
So my question is, what is the biggest challenge facing your ward at the moment, and how would you address it?
It's obviously the Johnson Street shelter. I believe Sean and I agree with that, and we actually agree on a lot of policy issues regarding that. And I guess not regarding the Johnson Street shelter, but with the infrastructure, with sidewalks, there's a lot of road maintenance that I feel like Ward 6 is at the bottom of the barrel. And I feel like, just like at the end here, I don't have to table it's Ward 6 is always the last one to be thought about. But we have a lot of connectivity issues with sidewalks. And then the interesting thing about sidewalks that a lot of people do not know is that it's in a little bit of what I like to call purgatory, because the homeowner is responsible for the costs of it. However, if you don't shovel it, you are fined by the city. So the city enforces it because it's in the public right of way, and yet you don't own it. So if you trip on the sidewalk, and you complain to the city, then the homeowner is responsible for paying for that damage. And it could be upwards of $30,000. And so there needs to be a lot of sidewalk reform, and that's a huge passion project of mine. So sorry if I go on long about that. Thank you.
Thank you, that's a great question. So I think, as Sandra alluded to, in our ward, in the Franklin to Ford neighborhood specifically, the Johnson Street shelter is really the biggest issue. Even above taxes, as I'm out knocking doors, it's the first thing people want to talk about. And so I think, we've got to be creative, and we have to seek ideas and seek communication and strengthen our public and private partnerships, and look to bring in our local leaders and civic leaders to help resolve this problem. This is like an all hands on deck. We need everybody to volunteer. We need our public government to do its best, and we need our private entities to support it as well. And then beyond that, it becomes like infrastructure, working on taxes and pushing on those things. I couldn't agree more about sidewalks, absolutely. Shoveling snow, fixing potholes, those types of things. Thank you.
All right, in Ward 5 specifically, there's probably multiple issues. Some of the things that come up are the building that might happen at Fort Missoula seems to be a huge concern for a lot of residents. Also, all the development that's happening in the area and asking some of the residents to pay for things like the roundabout is a major issue. But for me, I hear most about property taxes, and that's because my ward has a bunch of fixed income, which means older people who have to live off a tighter budget. So I hear that quite a bit, but there's also families up there, there's also young people, so that ends up being a topic on almost every time I knock on the door. That has multiple layers, one being we really need to get smart right now about working with the state, and we can do that as a community. It also means that we got to look at our budget. We may have to make some decisions to pause some items, items that are not necessary right now, and really focus on safety, infrastructure. And then lastly, I have presented this a few times, I think we need to look at other revenue streams. Right now, everything is shifted to property taxes, and being from Whitefish, tourist taxes of interest.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. I've knocked on thousands of doors literally in Ward 5 this election season, and overwhelming it is property taxes. As my opponent has stated, just people on fixed income, people on pensions. I spoke to one gentleman a few weeks ago. He's on a pension from the 1980s, which hasn't adjusted very well for inflation. He's paid for his house outright. He's owned it for 30 years. He lives in the Wapakia neighborhood, if anyone's familiar with that area. But he's having a hard time just making those property tax payments because they've gotten so hard and so compelling to try to take care of year after year. And I hear from young families. I hear it from the seniors trying to buy down a piece of property. If they live in a big house and want to buy it down to something smaller, not available. So part of it is addressing the affordable housing issue and streamlining the development review process, working with the updated growth policy to make sure that we have more options available for higher density housing.
Knocking on doors, I hear mainly two things. The one, did you know that Ward 4, they've moved the Johnson Street facility, is now in Ward 4, it's no longer Ward 6, but Ward 5 and 6 border it, but now it's in Ward 4. But the number one thing is taxes, because up around here you have a lot of elderly that live in their homes, and I think there's a lot of things we can do with the city budget to cut the spending. I think we have a spending problem. We don't have a tax problem. It's a spending problem. And one of the things that was touched on earlier is the tourist tax. I'll tell you, I am 100% against a tourist tax. And the reason being, it's a sales tax. And they have a tendency to grow. And watch out, because that happens. And that affects you and me. Because all your things are starting to trickle down. You go to the grocery store and you're paying a tourist tax. And as it grows, they say, well, it's...
She gave me a little time there. I think that infrastructure is an issue in every single ward. We have grown exponentially. Our housing prices have gone up quite a bit. And infrastructure is one of the most expensive things that we do. So there's no question to me about that. In Ward 4 specifically, the Johnson Street shelter is for sure an issue. We need to figure out where we are going to put a permanent shelter, and that is not the right place for it. So, but really, I think, I guess if we kind of combine what everyone's saying, these issues are citywide, and I think that infrastructure is citywide. Obviously, housing is an issue citywide, and climate change mitigation is a citywide issue. It's an issue for wildfire risk, wildfire mitigation. It's an issue for smoke in the summer. It's an equity issue in our city. And so I'm actually really excited to keep running, to keep serving, because we are doing some exciting work on that with... Hold on.
It's really hard to time your ending. So again, I'm Sam Kula. I'm running here in Ward 3. I didn't mention that before. This is Ward 3. The university's in Ward 3. And it goes as far out as Russell and the river and North Avenue or Kent Avenue on the south. As I knock on doors throughout this ward, the number one issue that people are telling me is really on their minds is housing costs. I hope I'm not the only renter who checks real estate apps in an aspirational way all the time. If you do, you'll notice that Ward 3 is kind of where prices jump. If you try to search in a certain price range, this is a really expensive area. And so one of the things that I want to do is I want to simplify our zoning and codes to make it easier for people that do have large square footage places, especially if they're really burdened by property tax, to build a few extra units, maybe even just one extra unit on their place to bring in a little bit extra income to pay those taxes while cutting into the housing shortage. So it's kind of a double-edged sword if we work about it that way. I have a lot of other ideas about how we can do that. I don't really have time to say it, but that's the biggest issue right here in Ward 3, it's the price of housing.
So, in talking with people in Ward 2, we hear a lot of, we're a very, very fast growing ward. We've had tons of new construction, tons of people come in. So we have a lot of issues with transportation, with traffic, with road conditions. We've had a lot of construction out there. So that is a big concern for people out there, is it's really hard to get in and out of our neighborhoods now. Everything is pretty congested. Property taxes is another thing. I do think that that is a citywide, countywide issue that we are dealing with, and We hear a lot of people talk about alternative revenue sources or this tax or that tax. I don't really ever hear anybody talk about, how about just don't spend the money? How about think about where you're spending it? So property taxes is huge. The other thing is crime. My car has been broken into 5 times. The last 2 times the police didn't even call me back because it's just gotten so out of hand. So those are the top issues that I'm hearing about in Ward 2.
Can you hear me? Okay. I would agree that for Ward 2 is very diverse. It includes Grand Creek, it includes the West Side neighborhood, it includes everything that's west of Reserve Street and north of Mullen Road. So I would say that growth and development for sure is the #1 challenge that we have in Ward 2 and the associated ramifications of growth. So added traffic, lack of infrastructure. In the west side, the ramifications of unhoused community, for sure, it's being felt more so in the west side. Property taxes, yes, it's been an issue, but I think people are really concerned about the amount of traffic, safety, and security for some of the existing and established neighborhoods. That's another issue, and I'm working on that issue regarding theft in your neighborhood. Thank you.
So again, Ward 2 for the West Side neighborhood, really affordable housing and affordable, to renters. And the affordable housing isn't going to get fixed until we fix the property tax, because a lot of the property tax is just going to get passed down to the renters. Fix the property tax, I think that there is an investment that can be, there is some gains that can come from the tourist tax. It relieves some of the pressure off of the property tax owners, the property owners, but also the tourist tax. The tourists are here, 3.5 million a year, and they're using our streets, they're using our parks, they're enjoying what we are offering, but they're not paying for that. So it's not necessarily a burden on them as much as it's relieving a little bit of burden from the property tax right now. With the housing population, the houseless population is not a city problem. It's a county problem, it's a state problem, it's a federal problem, and we need to get funding from those higher levels of government. Housing for homeless does not have to be within the city limits of Missoula.
So Ward 1 is a ward that's really primed for a lot of growth, particularly in neighborhoods like the North Side, which have been traditionally more affordable neighborhoods, are going to see a lot of explosive growth. And I think a lot of that growth is going to be higher density housing and infill development, which I'm not opposed to, but I do think it needs to be kind of managed and developed in the right way. I want to see that we're not adding on to what I think a lot of people have been speaking to, difficulties that we have with the state's really regressive property tax scheme. I also hear a lot as I'm on the doors of the north side about things like traffic. And traffic is tied into infrastructure in terms of trying to make sure that we can build out sustainable infrastructure, that we can make sure that we're investing in pedestrian and bike paths. It's also a climate issue, it's a safety issue, So I think making sure that we're looking at these things holistically in a way that we can kind of identify what these problems are and how they tie into our larger goals as a city. Thank you.
Yeah, I think to build on what Gwen said, and Ward 1 is very diverse. The Rattlesnake, and when you compare it against the North Side, 2 very different communities with very different income levels and needs. And I've heard a lot from the North Side about the intensity of development that's going in and how that is pushing people out. I've also heard from the Rattlesnake and from the East Side, climate change is a really big issue. And I want to talk about that because we talked about property taxes a bunch, which I think is the linchpin to fix some of this. But for climate, Missoula, the city of Missoula is leading on climate in terms of the state. I mean, this is a crisis of our generation, and we're doing something about it on the city level. We have several super ambitious plans. It's kind of like that motivational poster. Aim for the moon, and even if you miss, you'll land in the stars. That is kind of what we're going for here. And because we're nimble as local government, we can actually make impact on this. And we are making impact. So climate is something that I am really interested in working on and that we're doing a really great job on already.
Yeah, thank you once again for your responses. We really appreciate it. Thank you for dealing with the 1 minute time. I know it's constrictive, but I think that gives you the opportunity to, get it out there in a good soundbite, frame it like that. Coming up next, we've got a question for you from D'Artagnan.
All right. The question that I have for you is, are there development priorities you would like to see implemented in your ward? And this time we'll start with Eric going. So, right.
Sure. So we've talked a little bit about the north side, the development that's going on there. For those that don't know, there is a new housing development that has 400 units that just opened. 30 of those units are actually for the chronically unhoused, and those are actually being filled right now, which we're seeing that level of the unhoused go down because of that. One thing about that project, the horizontal infrastructure, roads, bike lanes, transit, was not improved and added before that development went in, so it's really difficult to move those people around. The pedestrian bridge in the north side has been closed for a little while. Luckily, that's under contract. We're going to get that open early next year. The last thing I want to talk about is the SAM grant, Safety, Accessibility, and Mobility grant that the city just applied for and was accepted. This is $25 million of federal funding that's going to redo downtown. It's going to make progress on the downtown master plan. We're going to have some new interchanges, or new, there's going to be new lights, which is going to add to safety, and we're going to connect the bike lanes along Higgins to the parks and trails along the river.
I would say the two things that the thing that I'm the most excited about in terms of developments on the north side. So we've seen these two housing developments go kind of be converted into co-ops. One is the Wolf Avenue Co-op, and the other is the River Run Co-op. I think these are really positive developments because I feel like the future of affordable housing in Missoula is going to be building out these kinds of situations where tenants can build equity in their housing and can kind of build this kind of collective power to kind of convert existing housing developments into permanently affordable housing developments where the residents have a permanent equity stake that they can take with them for the rest of their lives going forward. We'll cut the middlemen out of these processes where tenants will be paying just property taxes and maintenance fees. I think we could be thinking about creative housing solutions like that as we also think about ways in which we can develop housing going forward. Thank you.
For Ward 2, Grant Creek, of course, last year there was a lot of controversy there in their development of the land back by the gravel pit. When we develop it, we have to be looking at infrastructure development, whether the fire department can support 700 to 1,100 new houses in there, whether the arterials can support that, the roadways going in and out of there can support that, or if we need developing roadways. And in the Captain John Mullen area, same thing, is we're going to add a lot of traffic to Mullen Trail, and so we have to be thinking about those things as we develop those housing units. For down by the POM specifically, the POM has acquired the former 17-room Clark Fork Inn and is in process of transferring the property in order to house the houseless veterans. Housing Montana's Heroes program has been operating the POM existing shelter over the past decade. It serves about 20 homeless veterans in the semi-private rooms. So serving the veteran community is something that I really look forward to in the future.
Thank you. You guys look like you were doing the mac right now when you were here. I would say for Ward 2, we are seeing a significant amount of growth and development. So for me, what I'm excited about is having infrastructure that matches that growth and development. So more non-motorized transportation options, more transit, servicing the new communities that are getting established in that area, Western Reserve Street. So not so much development because we're getting it. I would like to see more mixed use in some of those areas so people don't have to use their car for everything. In the west side, I would really like to see the West Broadway master plan come to fruition, again with a mix of opportunities for people, whether it be residential, commercial, mixed use, but things that are really going to be of benefit to that neighborhood specifically. So those would be my top priority in terms of projects that I would like to see in Ward 2 benefit the community, the people who live in Ward 2. Thanks.
As Marcia said, we have lots of growth already happening in Ward 2, and I think looking at the different projects, streamlining the permitting process so that the growth can continue to happen, but also figuring out a way to talk with the people that are already there, invite the community engagement in what is the best way for us to grow, what infrastructure do we need, what is working, what isn't working, and really work on our outreach with the different neighborhood committees, with the different HOAs, so that we can get a real feel for what the people that are living in the middle of what sometimes feels like chaos, what's actually happening. I think we really need to focus on infrastructure and being very methodical in how we plan mixed-use development, how we plan new subdivisions, so that we aren't alienating the population that's already there while making space for new people to move into our community, and really make sure that it meshes well.
All right, before I go in a different direction, I totally agree about mixed use. I'm a big fan because that creates a lot more walkable neighborhoods where you can kind of stay close to home. You don't have to worry about how you're going to get where you're going. The biggest priorities I do want to see, though, tackled in Ward 3 is that we're encouraging infill here, but we're not just encouraging any old infill. We want to be careful, especially in the cases when we're going to use public money, be it from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund or TIF or anything else, that we're using that money to get the types of buildings that we want and that people can really afford. You know, and part of that's going to be better defining and being a little stricter about what affordability means, and pushing for that. And the other reason we really have to do this is because there's other issues that we're only going to be able to appropriately solve once we meet our basic human needs of, shelter and finances. If people are struggling to make a buck, struggling to put food on the table, and they're housing insecure, it's a lot harder to do the other things, such as, addressing climate change and protecting our planet.
Thanks. So while Mirta's ward has really expanded, Ward 3 and Ward 4 have actually shrunk in population, and so we had to move those boundaries a little bit. I think that the biggest opportunity in Ward 4 is in the Midtown area. We did a Midtown master plan. I was on that planning committee there. I agree about mixed use. That'll be great. I think that overall we need to be looking at code reform for the city. We're doing this is so fast. We're doing the code overhaul, and that will give us the opportunity to build more quickly, more streamlined, so we will get more housing on the ground, which will hopefully, make our ungridlock our market and also bring the prices down.
Okay, Ward 4, there up Hillview Way, there is a apartment complex going in there, and really that's about the only building that's going in Ward 4. And there's still some room for more. But the one thing that you don't hear, and especially you younger people should have your ears open on this because it's going to affect the next generations. You hear about infrastructure. What you don't hear is how much our aquifer has dropped over the last 10, 15 years. And I never hear anything about the expansion of our sewage treatment plant. And one day that's going to happen because they're already having trouble down there. And guess who's going to pay for it? You and me, the taxpayers, most of you being the renters. Rents are going to go up for future generations moving here. So that's one of my concerns, and that to me is the elephant in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. So in Ward 5, one of the big areas of concern right now is the lower Miller Creek neighborhood, and you have that Riverside Trail subdivision going in down there. And I think it speaks to, first and foremost in my mind, a lack of transparency from the get-go projects. It could be that project or any project you think of in the city. I think more foreknowledge of what's coming in early in the stage. They have to do an annexation there, then they do a preliminary plat, development review, that application comes from the developer. And I think we're too reliant on technology. We have Engage Missoula, which is great, but we need to do some old school stuff to make sure people there, particular elderly population, not so tech savvy, have a way of being engaged in community. I think it's an issue of equity in that sense. So we need to do a better job there. I think transportation plan, Missoula Connect, you look at it, doesn't really reflect the need for transportation improvements in lower Miller Creek to what's necessary. And real quick, since I have less than 10 seconds, Fort Missoula, Development being proposed there is inappropriate. I used to reserve there in the Army Reserve, and I don't like it. Thank you.
In terms of development, what I'm most excited about is some out-of-the-box ideas. I'm not as excited about all the brand new development going in because I think the cost is so expensive that I have friends who are teachers who still can't afford it. So the thing I'm most excited about is things like the workforce development ability, so people who are working can get housing. I like the ADUs, additional dwelling units, so potentially people who have homes who need extra income could have this mixed use. Maybe college students could actually live there, and the people actually get money and income. I like the idea of the co-ops that Gwen was talking about. I think that is genius. I think not everybody has to own a home to have safety in their living situation. So what I'm excited about on City Council is looking at different ways that we can actually get the population, which is over 2,000 people in Missoula who need better housing. I care about the people who live here right now. Sometimes when we're building these new homes, it feels like people are coming from out of state potentially, or people with higher income. What about the people who are making 30, 40, or less thousand? How are we going to get stable homes for them? And so I'm excited about those mixed use.
Awesome, thank you. This is a good question. So some of my ideas for Ward 6 specifically, I'm a very big fan of mixed use, and I think Ward 6 already represents that very well if you look at it. We have a lot of walkability. And then we've become a cut-through station for everybody trying to get off of Reserve or 3rd. Franklin, 4, and River Road are just constant cut-throughs. So one of my ideas is that I would like to see some type of neighborhood zoning where we have, places where it's traffic controlled and slower, and we try and discourage people cutting through our neighborhoods to get beyond, Think about roundabouts and choke points and improving our trails. I'd also like to see things where we have, trails that go through our neighborhoods for our bicyclists rather than on the main roads necessarily for winter. In my closing seconds, I also would like to see us maybe preserve a little bit more agricultural land in the River Road neighborhood.
Yeah, so the development opportunities in our ward, currently there is one in the River Road neighborhood. I cannot legally talk about it off of the official public record. However, right next to that development opportunity is a neighborhood with a lot of elderly folks in there. And then like somebody else mentioned, they're not very technically savvy, or technology savvy. So I facilitated a meeting. I reserved a conference room, got all of them downtown so that I could facilitate a meeting with the developers so that when the developers did not want to come in person, they could do an online interview with the folks who didn't quite understand Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So even though I cannot talk about it, I was happy to help out the folks with that. If you look at my voting record, I'm a big fan of private property rights, and Daniel Carlino and I actually teamed up to get the council to be in support of Senate Bill 323, which allows duplex housing. It must be allowed as a permitted use on a lot where single-family residence is a permitted use. So I'm really proud that we got that passed.
All right, thank you guys very, very much. This next one's going to be a little more complicated. We're trying to keep you on your toes, keep everything light so late in the evening. So we're going to start with Amber, and we're going to work our way left, and then immediately after Eric, Sandra, you're up again. I just got left again. So Amber, my left. That's my bad. See, I'm telling you, keep you on your toes. Exactly. So my question, and I can kind of see this forming in the way you guys have been talking, is what is your top priority issue? Were you elected? What is going to be the first thing that you attempt to tackle in your term?
Okay, so the top, did you say the top one?
Number one.
Number one. Okay, so I've spent most of my life in conservation, as I said, and so climate change mitigation is for sure my top priority, although I have other priorities, and we are kind of wear a lot of hats on council. I have been working on a team on a renewable rate option with Northwestern Energy to bring sustainable energy, renewable energy, building a new facility, not just moving numbers around on a spreadsheet, that we will be able to buy into as a municipality and as members of the community. So I'm very interested in doing that. I'm very interested in also, buying we have the wastewater treatment solar array, which is the largest in western Montana. I'm really proud that we got that done. I'm also the water company buying that and dealing with deferred maintenance. Pumping water takes a lot of energy. And there's so much more, so much more.
Minute flies by. If I'm to be elected, and I hope that I am, appreciate y'all giving me consideration, my most important thing is going to be that we can cover our basic human needs in terms of making people able to afford to live here, afford housing, and if people don't have housing, getting them in housing. And we have to be upfront that it's going to cost money, so part of that job is going to be finding different ways to fund that. We need a lot of different ways to fund it. I'm a big fan of a tourist tax as long as we can find a way to exempt locals from it. Maybe if you show your Montana ID, you wouldn't have to pay. Another idea that I've really been tossing around would be something like a special parking pass for downtown that you could buy on a yearly basis as a voluntary option that would basically provide some flexible money that we could use for whatever we want because it's not a tax source. And I think a lot of people would be pretty excited to pay to not have to use the loop machines. So,
I'm sorry, I do love your parking pass idea, and I know there's an app, but I don't like the apps, so I like apps. My number one priority is property tax relief, and I think the way we do that is we take a really long, hard look at the budget. We look at where we're spending money. Are we spending money frivolously? Are we prioritizing our needs over our wants? Missoula has a huge heart. Everybody who lives here wants to do something bigger and better and improve everything along the way, but we can't afford everything. So I think in providing property tax relief, we need to really look at how and where we're spending our money, and maybe we can find some efficiencies to improve other areas of what's happening in our city.
Thank you. The app is great. But I would say that priorities for me is to, actually, this question is really good because I think that many of us want to come into council and start doing things. But the truth of the matter is that what we want is not necessarily what we're tasked to do, what we have to do immediately because it's a need, a community need. So what I would like to do is to continue to work on the zoning code update, to continue to be involved in the long-range transportation plan, make sure those two things are aligned in providing the services that Missoulians need. What we do need to do as soon as anyone gets back on council, re-elected or elected for the first time, is to address our unhoused population, help them, and help our community manage that challenge. So I think that's going to be the number one thing, whether we want to or not, because it's the one thing that's pressing our community right now. Thanks.
So I have a sister, I have a wife, I have 2 daughters, I have 2 granddaughters. Number one priority for me that has not been discussed and hopefully will never be discussed is ensuring medical privacy for women. So, not going too much into that, I'll talk to anybody that wants to offline, you can read into that however you want to. But since I have time, number 2 priority is the houseless population. And getting the county, the state, the federal funding, getting a center for those houseless population to be protected. But also, it does not have to be within city limits of Missoula. It can be within the county. We are supporting much larger than just the residents that grew up here in Missoula. And there's rhetoric out there that says these are our neighbors, these are our friends, most of them are, but there are some that came here because there's shelter for them. And we need to, I love the hearts of Missoula, the people of Missoula, they look out for each other, and we want to look out for this houseless population. But we want to look out for it, and we want to fund it because it's a federal issue with federal dollars. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to say I agree with Mirta that I think the most pressing thing to deal with from the perspective of City Council is the unhoused population. It's really close to me, it's close to my heart because I work directly with a lot of unhoused folks. I'm part of Food Not Bombs and the Unhoused Neighbors Union. So I talk with unhoused people on a weekly basis. I'm trying to stay in constant dialogue with these people and try to assess what their needs are and what directions that they'd like to see city policy go in so that they can feel more supported and gain a higher degree of economic independence, seek greater opportunity, and go about the work of being better neighbors to their housed counterparts. I do think, something that you mentioned is that people come here for shelter. The fact of the matter is there isn't enough shelter in Missoula. There aren't enough shelter beds to accommodate everybody who's unhoused in Missoula. So, and which brings us into some thorny issues with compliance with things like Martin v. Boise. I think solutions that are being pursued at the city council level are not bringing us closer to that compliance. So I want to see us bring a more humane approach to the unhoused community.
Yeah, it's a tricky question to answer in 1 minute, and there's been a lot of great responses, but I think for me, property tax, they're the linchpin that would allow the city to free up more budget to put into things like homelessness, to put into things like affordable housing, and the legislature is failing us on this front. They had the opportunity, and the Department of Revenue had the opportunity this past session to put the burden more equitably across industry, across centrally assessed properties like pipelines, and they chose to force the property tax burden onto the backs of renters and homeowners like you and I. I think that's unfair, and I think that working in coalitions, the League of Cities and Towns, the Association of Montana Counties, all the other communities are struggling from this and figuring out how are they going to levy enough bonds or mills to pay for their school system, let alone pay for some of these things that we're talking about, like our unhoused population. So I really see property tax as a linchpin, and I want to get that right, and I want to make sure that it fits the economy that we have, not the economies that we've had.
I have to agree with property taxes, but I disagree with blaming the legislature because it is our fault as well. I went to our budget meeting in August with 7 amendments to cut the budget. And I did withdraw some because I got a little overzealous in cutting the budget. And then some were tabled, and the rest of them they just failed. There was no even an opportunity to discuss the possibility of even cutting those programs. So I'm really frustrated about that. However, I have great rapport with my colleagues and all the city staff, so that I want to continue that up, so that maybe we can come to a compromise to cut some programs or redistribute the dollars to other more important programs. Because the current interim mayor said that if we wanted to do a 5% budget increase instead of a 9.78%, we'd have to cut off a limb, not trim the fat. I think we should cut off a limb, because right now my 2.5-year-old in federal debt owes $100,000, and he's 2. That is insane. We need to cut things at a local level, and we need to start now.
Okay, thank you for this question. So my top priority would be the housing and homeless folks. The homeless shelter up against my ward, that used to be in my ward, is something that we need to work on and resolve. So I would work on that issue much the way I alluded earlier. I would be looking to build coalitions within our city and strengthen the partnerships that we have. I'd be working to find common ground with my colleagues and create ideas to address that. That would be my #1 priority. Falling very, very close, in like 1.5, would be working on property taxes and looking for the opportunities where we can, as a city, find ways to cut, but also recognizing that there is responsibility at the state legislature, which has to be dealt with. We have to address that as well. And then infrastructure and the code reform would be my 1 3/4, because that code reform is a great opportunity for us to address housing. Thank you.
Okay, as was said before, I too care very deeply about the budget. I think that we are living in a society where 2 things can be true at once. We are going to have to get strict and pause some of our budget because of what happened at the state legislature. And I want to be really clear about what happened at the state legislature. They appraise properties every 2 years, And the DOR told them that it was going to go up this high, and they told all the legislators, and they chose to vote to not turn down the rate. They can turn down the rate, and we can have the same budget. So two things can be true where we are now in a position as a city where our budget is too high because people are struggling with the property taxes that came out of state legislation. So when I talk about alternative sources like the tourist tax, which is very successful on Whitefish, and the way that they do that is they subsidize things like rental cars, going out to eat. They do not go and target grocery stores ever. So these are ways in which that we can come up with alternative revenue sources so that we can fund things like our city budget, so we can take care of our unhoused and come up with ways to have affordable housing. So I think that we're really going to have to get strategic about working together, city and state.
Thank you. So, in a sense, what comes down to what city council duties and responsibilities, it boils down to three things as I see it. They have the ability to levy taxes, they have the ability to spend money, they have the ability to pass ordinances, laws, zoning ordinances, and the like. And everything they do under that framework is allowed under Montana Code and allowed under city charter, dealing with housing, dealing with homelessness, dealing with emergency services infrastructure, all vent through those three duties that city council have. But at the end of the day, none of that could work well for you all, and the citizens of Missoula, and for the community at large without engagement. And I think the number one issue for me in that regard is transparency in local government, which I believe has been woefully lacking here for many, many years. I think we need to improve on that. That would be my top priority. I think of the Lower Middle Creek neighborhood. I think of downtown business community being blindsided by the Higgins Street that's being proposed. I think of the budget process too. Mayor submits a budget, council gets a little time to deliberate on it.
Money, 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 money. That's it. And it's city's money, how it comes in, how it's processed, and how it's spent. Everything that you've heard, everything from housing, homelessness, tax, it's all money. And it's very critical that we watch how we spend it. And I think I attended a conference in Bowling Green, Kentucky a couple of years ago. And we met with the city fathers and the university had a presence there. And here's the thing, that city uses the university like you would not believe. And one of the things I question, we pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for studies to be done all over. Why aren't we chartering the university to do that? I think you people hold the key to get a lot of these things done and to help the city rein in the spending and the taxes. Thank you.
All right, thank you very, very much for your conclusions and things you've given us to think about. We were, sorry for the noise, we were debating because we want you guys to answer this question because we feel like it's it intersects with a lot of what you've been saying. But I'm going to hand it to Nico because he'll be able to ask it way better than I can.
Okay, so my question for you is, do you think that our system of public transportation adequately serves your ward and its constituents' needs? If not, how would you improve public transportation access in your ward?
And because we're throwing you another curveball, we're going to start at Allen and go right and then do the same operation on the other side. So after Sandra comes Eric.
Okay, public transportation. Well, one of the things, the buses are great, but as far as I'm concerned, right now, they're way too big. And that costs us a lot of money. We should be using the buses the size of airport shuttles, smaller, because I see these buses, especially going up and down Whitaker, they're empty. And people aren't using them, and I don't know if they're afraid of their size or what, but I would like to see us start leaning towards smaller buses. That helps with the tax burden because it lowers the cost. I'd also like to see bike lanes, but I'd rather see them on secondary streets because we do have a lot of problems on the busy streets. I don't want to ride a bike on the reserve, but I'd like to see off the secondary streets. I think that's key. And we don't have a problem with sidewalks that I'm aware of. But the thing is the buses. I think we could be more creative with that.
So in Ward 5, I think there are a number of issues. Number one, you think of the transportation plan Missoula Connect talks about infrastructure, talks about accessibility, talks about equity. And you know, in Ward 5 specifically, particularly as you get further up the hill, tends to be less service. I know some people have complained to my door knock in the past, you know, they're paying that tax from the Missoula Urban Transportation District for Mountain Lion Bus, but they're not getting the service. So that's of concern to me to make sure there's equity in that regard. Also, you know, I think specifically to my particular neighborhood off 23rd, don't know anyone who lives off 23rd in here, no sidewalks. It's a tough place to ride a bike, it's a tough place to walk. Especially in the winter time, this time of year. You know, eventually I think there need to be a SID of some sort to fund that. I just think we have to think through how to do that fairly, so the people that use that street are the ones that, you know, would be on the hook for some kind of long-term funding of that. I'm on the SID for Hillside Drive. I don't even drive up there, so.
Well, Bob and I live in the same area, and it's pretty hilly. I would say that this is a topic that I look forward to learning a lot more on City Council about what we can do and how we can add to this. I will say that when we're building infrastructure, I also want to think about communities being self-sufficient more, so that brings more green. But can we build communities like the new one where there's the den and there's restaurants, where people can get around within their community instead, when you're asking like where are they going? Are we always trying to get people to downtown, or can we keep it green and have more sidewalks where people are riding their bikes? I will say I'm not seeing as much bus use as I'd like to see out there, and I think I need to discover how much that costs, but I'd love to see more options, just more times. I notice it's really hard to connect from one bus to the next in our area, and I'm seeing buses show up at 6 a.m., but I'm not seeing as many at like 10 or 11 where people are needing. So seeing if there's more options we can add to people would be a big part of what I would look into. Thanks.
All right. Man, lots of good questions at this forum. So we are pretty lucky in Ward 6. The buses serve us pretty well. I think we could see maybe increase in service as far as how often. And, you know, I think following that, I would love to work on sidewalks in this town. You know, our neighborhood's kind of old, and we have a lot of like folks that don't have sidewalks. And the idea of, even now that there's a cap, that cap is $10,000 is eye-boggling to most residents. So I'd really like to see us figure something out around sidewalks, as well as shoveling sidewalks, so that we can make that happen and that there's not a fine. And then biking. Like, I've been a long-time biker, not so much anymore since I had 2 kids, but I'd like to see us incorporate more side trails and paths and making it safer to move around the city as a whole. I'm willing to run on reserve, but it's nice to have back alleys to sneak through.
Yeah, we are pretty lucky. We have the bus that goes on Russell, Wyoming, 3rd Street, Johnson Street. So it is it is pretty adequate in Ward 6. I have been very critical of the bus system. My father-in-law lives in Potomac, and he pays for the bus, and he does not go out to Potomac, obviously. And I also have been critical of the Wi-Fi. However, when I can't knock it till you try it. Every quarter I try to ride the bus because I want to keep up on it and see if I can change my mind regarding that. And I realized that Stockman Bank actually it pays for the Wi-Fi. So I learned something new that day. And so when I took my toddler to the library, I got on the bus, I had to go to the mall, and then all the way around town, and then through the university, and then to the library. It took almost an hour. When if I walked, or even if I walked, it would have taken me like 20 minutes. If I would have rode my bike, it would have taken me 10. So yeah, the bus system, maybe we could increase the routage, but I think that's happening, so I'll end.
All right. Just as a reminder, Mountain Lion is a separate entity than the City of Missoula. Mountain Lion is a partner of the city, and they operate under a cooperative agreement, and they are an amazing organization that offers zero fare to all of their riders. They've also really worked hard on their emissions reductions, and a lot of their vehicles run on natural gas instead of petrol, which is amazing. Public transit does affect climate, it affects affordability, it affects equity, it affects access. And what I've heard from canvassing Ward 1, we can expand routes. Upper Rattlesnake doesn't really have a bus line. The bus kind of stops at a certain point in the Rattlesnake, and some folks up there are interested in additional services for the bus line. Same goes for the Canyon River Golf Course, which is part of Ward 1 as well in East Missoula. There aren't as many stops over in East Missoula as folks would like, and I think that's my time, so thank you.
Yeah, just echoing what Eric said, I've spoken to constituents who really want that expanded bus service into the Upper Rattlesnake, into East Missoula. I'm immensely proud of our bus system. I'm a regular user of it. I think it's amazing that we have a really quick and reliable bus service that's free from the service, that's safe and clean. It's really incredible, and it's something that I think makes Missoula stand out amongst cities in North America. And you know, just to add on to that, my main other thing that I hear people when I'm talking in the north side is just pedestrian access, bike access. A bike lane that's painted onto the road is not really a bike lane. A bike lane has to be protected in order for it to function as intended. It'd be nice for people who are more mobility challenged to be able to get around in the north side and in the Rattlesnake. It'd be nice for parents on the north side to be able to send their kids to Lowell School just walking. So yeah, I think there's challenges we could face, but it's great. I love the bus.
So Ward 2, I live right near Lowell Elementary, right on Phillip Street. I can walk literally a block to the bus, can get on the bus, I can take the bus to the downtown. I can switch buses, take the bus to the YMCA, spend a few hours there, get back on the bus, take it to the mall, and then switch buses at the mall, hang out there, or head back home on the next bus line. So it gives me great mobility throughout the city for all the common areas that I usually visit within the city. As we look into further development in the Captain John Mullen area neighborhood, look at behind the VA, potential development there. We're going to have to look at how the bus supports that, and a lot of times the bus, we heard before, a lot of times the bus is nearly empty. But as we start pushing those bus routes further out, we're hoping to get more people on those buses. And I think right now it sounds like we have enough buses to meet that need. And it sounds like we have a green movement that's going to push towards lower emissions on this bus and go completely green by 2035. So that's great things for the future here.
Thank you. As a transportation planner, I love this question. I can tell you that the amount of the Missoula Urban Transportation District, which is Mountain Line, the amount of service that they can provide is really a function of demand. So the more people you have, the more buses and the more service that you're going to have. So as we continue to grow, that's going to be changing. One of my, what I would really like to see is for us to focus our development around transit. So transit-oriented development is a great way to add that demand to our transit system. I think it's also a function of capacity, and we were lucky to receive $39 million for a new facility for Mountain Line, and I'm really excited about that. We also got $11 million for electric buses, which I think is going to make a huge difference in Missoula. I really do appreciate the collaboration that we have with UDASH and the University Transportation System. It's a great way to provide efficient transit in Missoula. And lastly, I think that's it. That's all I think.
I agree, the buses seem pretty empty, and I do think as we're replacing our fleet, as we're moving toward the natural gas buses, the zero emission buses, replacing them with smaller buses is a good idea. I think I am not a huge fan of the zero fare. The last time it was on the ballot to give more money to Mountain Line, I did the math, and if Mountain Line charged $1 a fare, they would have made more money than we gave them. And so I would like to see the people that are using the bus pay for the bus, and those people that are not using the bus not have to pay for the bus. But I do feel like the service in my area at this point is adequate, but as we grow, there will probably be challenges with that.
Yeah, I like our bus system. It's a pretty good bus system. There's always room for improvement. Speaking solely about buses, one of the things that I would like to see happen would just be some minor tweaks in the route to make it a little more mesh-like so that we can get to different parts of town more efficiently. As it is now, sometimes, depending on where you are and where you're going, it can actually take quite a while to take the bus. But moving away from the bus, just kind of thinking about the big picture, we need to make sure that we're focusing on sustainable transport overall
and taking cues from leaders in the community who have already made a lot of their careers about looking for that. Missoula has the potential to become a leader, regionally about how we do improve a transit system beyond things like buses. We're talking about protected bike lanes and also, even sort of sliding that into the mixed use thing where we can create more walkable neighborhoods and thus eliminate the need for transport at all for a lot of basic things that people are doing. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not sure how much more I have to add other than I love our bus system, and I ride the bus all the time and it is not empty. I rode it downtown this morning. It's definitely not empty, so I'm confused by that. But zero fare is an equity issue to me, so I am 100% for that. I'm really proud that we can do that. We've won awards for our bus system. It is also, I'm not going to go back into climate because I feel like I'm railing on that, but I mean, it is a huge climate issue. So public transportation is important. Multimodal is important. I'm thankful that Mirta brought up the grant, the federal grant, $39 million that Mountain Lion got to build a new facility. I don't know how many years out it will be, but all of our buses will be electric. So that is amazing, especially if we get this renewable rate option through and we can have it all on sustainable energy. So I think we have some work to do on multimodal, and mixed use makes it a lot better because you're not commuting as far to work, you're not commuting as far to the grocery store.
Thank you guys all for that. Public transportation is one of those thorny issues where it just is so different depending on your ward, depending on your neighborhood and the community that you serve. So it's good to see that you have such a wide kind of set of perspectives. And we'd like to thank you again for coming tonight because it really is a privilege for us as the community to get to talk to you in this way. And so often I find that politics can be inaccessible. So having you guys here in your flannels warms my heart. We're going to transition now. We're going to bring up the chair of MontPIRG, Matty French, and then we're going to transition towards the mayoral portion. So if we can get a round of applause for our candidates. Thank you all very much.
All right, we are about ready. I am Matty French. I am a first-year grad student in the Political Science Department and the board of MontPIRG. I'm really thrilled to see all of you here. This is a wonderful turnout. I want to reiterate what my dear Vice Chair Hunter Bighorn said. We are a non-profit, non-partisan organization, both MontPIRG and the ACS. That means that we're really happy to see everybody from all sides come together and talk about the issues that really matter for Missoula. Now, I just want to reiterate the rules that we've been over. This is a forum. This is not a debate. We want everybody to be respectful. We want candidates to stay constructive and focus on your own issues and your own vision for Missoula. Everybody out here, if you have an issue, take it to the ballot box. Use your voices and be heard. Up next, we have our two mayoral candidates, Andrea Davis, the Executive Director of Homeward, and Mike Nugent, a local realtor and a current City Council member. Candidates will have 2.5 minutes to introduce themselves. They will have 2 minutes per question, and they will have 4 minutes for their final question. Of course, our wonderful moderators will be giving hand signals for time. Again, thank you all for being here. Let's get down to it.
Thank you very much, and thank you both for coming here. We're so happy to have you tonight. Wonderful flannels, as always. So, again, looking at the format, we've got 2.5 minutes for this first section here. It'll cover introductions. As you may remember from the previous round, we had the section at the half and then at that 10-second mark. So when you get down to, gosh, I mean, it's like 60 seconds, a minute left, we'll give you that C. And when we get down to that last 10 seconds, we'll give you that fist. So just remember that, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. We've got the first question coming from, well, introductions actually is probably in order. So let's hear it from Andre first.
Okay, sounds good. Is this microphone on? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you for having us. It's nice to see everyone. Thank you for sticking around for Mike and I after that really robust conversation. My name's Andrea Davis. I'm running for Missoula's next mayor. Montana is my home state. I have called Missoula my home for the last 25 years. I am a graduate from Flathead Valley Community College, and then I came here to the University of Montana and put myself through college and enjoyed every minute of it. I graduated with a degree in organizational communications and environmental studies. I am a proud member or ex-member of MontPIRG, so while I was here at the university, I also participated in MontPIRG, and it was a wonderful opportunity for me to both engage in civics, but also understanding where and how I could be more effective. It was my first board experience. I served as the secretary of MontPIRG, and then also I staffed the tenant-landlord phone line. We did that for a long time. It was really my first experience in understanding the complexity of the tenant-landlord law here in Montana. I graduated, and shortly thereafter I was able to start my career with Homeward. So for 22 years I've been doing this work. 17 at Homeward, and 5 I spent at Missoula Housing Authority. So I've been building homes that Montanans can afford. At Homeward, we are also focused on sustainable development. That's really what brought me to the organization. I mentioned I had an interest in work in environmental studies. And similarly to what we heard said earlier, it's hard to want to care for the environment if you don't have a roof and food to eat. So it's really been something that I've been focused on helping Montanans afford their cost of living. Over the time that I've been the executive director of Homeward, I've built that organization statewide. We've built properties now in 14 Montana communities, and we've built over 1,300 homes. About 2,000 people any one night are living in a safe, healthy home as a result of that. And we're also a housing counseling agency, so we teach financial skill building and home buyer education. I am very concerned about the cost of living. I have my whole career. 3 things, mostly housing, childcare, property taxes. We heard a lot about that tonight. I'm very passionate about bringing solutions forward regarding climate change. And I think we have some excellent opportunities in front of us here with the gift that the federal government has provided through the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I got the, okay,
10
sorry.
seconds of it.
Yeah. Okay, and I got the double cross.
Some of the forums, we've had cowbells and other things like that. So these last ones have been very nice. As the introduction said, my name is Mike Nugent. I'm born and raised here in Missoula. I kind of feel like Andrea and I are on the circuit. A couple more of these and we can start doing a show and charging people. But it's been an enjoyable conversation to be part of running for mayor of Missoula. And I think that one of the most interesting and rewarding things is just being able to engage with so many different people and learn what matters and what they care about and what drives them to be involved and love Missoula. As I've said, I'm born and raised here, and I've tried to be involved in Missoula in a lot of different ways. I own a small business. I run a company that has offices in 18 markets across the state. We have about 300 employees. A handful of those are actually taught some of those home buyer education classes at Homeward. So Andrea and I actually do know each other outside of this race, and that's been one of the unique things about this race. Is just I think for the first time in quite a while, Missoula has just had a good conversation on the issues, and I think it's long overdue when you hear from all these great city council candidates about some of the challenges we're facing, and those are only magnified in the conversations that we're having. I've been the past president of Missoula County United Way, and I've also served prior to my current tenure on city council. I was on the Missoula Housing Authority. So I've seen housing from a lot of different perspectives, from that private perspective, but also the affordable housing perspective. And I've seen some of the challenges we're facing. I wrote a guest column in 2015 when the city of Missoula was updating our growth policy. And that was before I was elected to anything. I'm actually brand new in elected office. And I said in that guest column that the people who live in Missoula, who work in Missoula, should be able to live here. And I've been saying that ever since because it's true. And that's why I ran for city council, and that's why I'm running for mayor. We have an issue And we're kind of at a crisis point where Missoula can turn into a lot of other towns we've seen in the West, where we become haves and have-nots, or we can try and fight back and make a difference. And in Missoula right now, the homeownership rate is 45%. Nationwide, it's about 65%. State of Montana, it's 69%. But in the city of Missoula, 45%. So that is what's at stake in this election, is trying to fight for that opportunity to provide people that security and that protection moving forward. See the X's.
All right, now that we're on track and I've got everything together. Yeah, I think it's on. If not, we'll figure it out. During this next section, as Maddie mentioned, you've got 2 minutes to answer the next couple of questions. We'll give you the signals in much the same way. You'll get the C when you have a minute left, the fist when you get 10 seconds left, and that'll hopefully kind of help regulate the time a little bit. This first question is coming from D'Artagnan relating to infrastructure.
Yeah, the first question that I have for you guys is, if someone came to you with a proposal for a new public infrastructure project, how would you evaluate whether or not that project was worth implementing? And we'll start
with Mike.
I think right now, with the situation we're in with kind of the budget, the property tax situation that so many of our council candidates explained so well, we have to evaluate infrastructure projects on how they impact Missoulians' daily lives, and if the investment we're making in it is worth the difference that we're making. Now, obviously, if we're talking about road infrastructure versus housing infrastructure versus sewer, there's lots of different ways to kind of take a look at those projects. But if we can do things like, I was part of the public-private partnership that went to DC and lobbied for the BUILD grant, which brought $13 million to Missoula and put in the infrastructure out in the Mullen area, the Mullen BUILD grant, which is going to help support 6,000 housing units over the next probably 10 to 15 years. If we have projects like that that are making a difference in housing, I think that's where our priority needs to be. The next thing we need to take a look at is if it's helping the grids and the infrastructure in the neighborhoods that are feeling the pinch from infill and from the growth that they're experiencing. Because as we look around Missoula, we can all identify areas that I believe get more attention, such as downtown, and areas such as River Road, the end of Scott Street, places like that, that are feeling that growth but don't get the attention, I think, from council, from the city that they deserve. So going back to your question on how we evaluate that, I think it's how it impacts the daily lives of Missoulians, and if it helps them achieve more affordability, more connectivity, and things like that.
Okay, I'm not sure this is on, but I'm gonna see if that works. That's okay? Can you hear me? Okay, so somebody brought a new infrastructure project, and how would I evaluate that? I would assume, based on your question, that this new infrastructure project would not necessarily already be planned for in our capital improvement plan. The city of Missoula utilizes a capital improvement plan to plan out its existing resources, both those that we receive from the federal government and the state, as well as local generated dollars. I would evaluate that plan against things that we already have on the books for future planning opportunities, because I would want to see how this new option and of course I say I, but would that be me alone? No, it would be obviously with the staff, departments that are responsible for evaluating infrastructure and determining how this new proposal would fit into existing plans. Doesn't mean it has to fit into existing plans. This replaces something, maybe it's better, maybe it leverages or augments something. I would want to be able to evaluate what this plan is bringing to the table. A good example, I sit on Mountain Line's board of directors. I love that question that was asked earlier and the opportunity that as an organization we've brought forward to bring good, clean energy and transportation to Missoula. One thing that we've been looking at is on-demand travel, smaller vehicles. It's one way that rural communities have actually addressed some of their transit needs. There are pros and cons to that. We're looking at that because of areas like Ward 5 we were talking about earlier, where the bus really is challenged actually with accessing that part of the valley, the way that valley is laid out. It's not just because people don't want to get on the bus. Land use makes a very big difference in how transportation and transit operates. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Now, in organizing this panel, we actually kind of had a very nice question sent to us by the Climate Response Club. Now, they would like to know from the two of you, would you be willing to spend more revenue on initiatives to reduce Missoula's carbon footprint? And if yes, how would you plan to pay for any initiative that aims to do this? And we'll start with Andrea.
Thank you for this question. I will tell you that I just came off of, Talkback Live radio this morning, and so heard from lots of constituents about how not to spend one more dime, and in particular on climate, right? So we have got a very diverse group of folks in our community that do not want us to spend any more money. Me as a mayor, one of the things that I am committed to is seeing that we can continue to push our climate achievements forward. We currently do invest in staff at the city level, and I would like to evaluate our current staff structure for how we staff our current positions in order to really push this forward. I think that it's important that we have staff that have the agency to actually move some initiatives. And I would like to see us be able to provide more resources where we are as a community, knowing how tight our budget is with the amount of demands that we currently have. We would have to reallocate funds, and I do think that's possible. I'm very excited to get into office to be able to do an assessment with all of the different departments to see how we can use resources differently. I mentioned the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, and I mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act. There are resources that we can go after as municipalities to help move these initiatives forward.
I don't know if this microphone's on or not.
I don't know if this one is either.
It doesn't feel like they're doing it.
It's really hard to tell. Hopefully,
You can hear us okay, right? Yeah. Okay.
hopefully TV can hear us.
I mean,
You know, with the Inflation Reduction Act, there's actually never been a more exciting time to be a local government that is invested in climate change. So I think there are going to be opportunities in front of us to do big things. The reality of our budget right now is we have a $4 million deficit going into next year before we even look at cost of living adjustments or anything like that because of money, one-time federal money from COVID relief and some other things that came from the MRA. So the answer is really it depends. I don't think, and I don't think Andre can do this either, I just don't think that we can say affirmatively that we commit to a hypothetical project without knowing the details. You've got to weigh that against all the other priorities of the city and make sure that how we're spending the money makes sense in the moment. But I am committed to the climate goals that the city has set out, and I believe that what we are doing as a city is progressive and helping to lead the way in Montana. You heard Councilwoman Cheryl talk a little bit about the green tariff initiative that ratepayers of Northwestern Energy in the city of Missoula and the county of Missoula are going to be able to hopefully pay into in the coming years. And I think that's a good deal. But I'd also like to see us do some things that bring our carbon footprint and our impacts at the local level and at the individual level more into focus. I want to help people understand and apply for grants and opportunities to do solar in their houses. And I'd like to see the community get into composting in a way that we aren't doing right now. We have a great opportunity because we do own our sewage treatment plant and we own what's formerly called Eco Compost, Missoula Compost right next to that. So I believe there are opportunities to engage at the individual level to get people to help achieve these goals without even realizing it.
Thank you for your answer to those questions. We're going to go ahead and pass the mic to Nico. He's got a question for you on childcare.
According to the Montana Budget and Policy Center, in 2022, there was one child care slot for every 3 children younger than age 6 in Montana. Do you believe the local government has a responsibility to address this issue? And how would you do so?
Child care is all hands on deck, in my opinion. I'm raising 2 kids. My youngest daughter just started kindergarten. And for the previous 9 years between her and my son, we were at the same daycare. And we were lucky enough that I guess maybe 10 years ago now, 11 years ago, we got on the waiting list before my son was born. We got into that daycare facility, and because he was there, my daughter was able to go as well. Last year, my wife and I spent over $15,000 on childcare, and that is actually low for what families in Missoula are spending. So we have to factor in how the city of Missoula can help, because this is one of the biggest issues facing working families in Missoula. At the same time, the city isn't going to be a child care provider. We do a lot of stuff through Parks and Rec that provides after-school activities, provides camps and things like that. I think that's a great place for us to be, but we need to work with partners in the private sector and the nonprofit sector to make a difference. And one of the things we've done is, when I was the president of the Missoula County United Way, we helped start up the Missoula Child Care Advantage. That program received a grant from the state of Montana to be revolutionary in child care, and they are building a child care backbone so that service providers can focus on what they do best, which is being in classrooms with their kids, and kind of be part of a co-op that does things like HR and supply ordering and stuff like that. The city is committed to helping fund part of a position to help run that, and I think those are creative opportunities that we can do. There's also a project called Rivera at the end of Scott Street that is going to include space dedicated for childcare. And I also serve on the board of the YMCA, which is the largest licensed childcare provider in the state. And that organization right now is actually capital campaigning to double their childcare facility ability to meet those needs. And we have to support groups like that however we can.
Great. Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly. The city has to be involved in this conversation and topic. I sit on the board of the Missoula Economic Partnership, and I will say that this is something, as a housing professional and somebody that has been talking about the cost of living undermining the workforce for years, both housing and childcare have squarely come into the economic development realms. And I am applauding that statewide. Missoula Economic Partnership recognized that through all of our stakeholder outreach in the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. Billings, Great Falls, all of our major hubs, including small cities, have recognized this because employers cannot expand their businesses and they can't retain employees. And new businesses that want to come to our communities are really struggling with this. There are things that we can do as a city. I think that Mike outlined it well, that we're relatively limited financially. We're going to add a large line item. That is not something with a budget-constrained city that we'll probably be able to do as much as we'd like. But there are opportunities that we can do culturally to raise this up. We need to be finding ways through our existing plans, looking across the board, our housing policy, for example. How are we utilizing our Affordable Housing Trust Fund and our housing policy to incentivize developers to incorporate childcare within their existing projects? Our zoning code is something that actually currently undermines folks' ability to have affordable childcare in their home. There's opportunities for us to make sure we can create more flexible space so people can afford to have childcare within their own home rather than large commercial scale type facilities. And then across the board, as an organization, the city itself needs to support our own employees. And when we look to expand into the federal building, finding space within the federal building to make sure that we can have on-site childcare would be very important.
Thank you both very much. So now we're moving on to kind of our biggest question of the evening. You'll remember throughout the whole of the city council debate, one issue continued to resurface, and that is how exactly to address the issue of our houseless population, how best to, cater to not cater necessarily, but to take care of that community and to ensure that they're well cared for and taken care of as their neighbors. This question will come with a 4-minute time limit, so this is the final one, I believe. Unless you stole it from me. I think they stole it from me.
This is definitely the longest one.
Yeah. So the question here is, 5 years ago, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit found that it was unconstitutional for cities to clear houseless camps and criminally charge campers unless they could offer adequate housing. However, there are proposed Missoula ordinances suggesting stricter rules for vehicle dwellers, homeless campers, and those who are experiencing houselessness. Although these charges are not criminal, if people are experiencing houselessness do not pay fines for civil charges. These unpaid fines can turn into a criminal offense. What possible solutions do you see the city undertaking to help shelter our currently unhoused population and bolster the services which are currently provided by a coalition of governmental agencies and non-governmental organizations? Subsequently, how, if you do, will you justify this ordinance?
Okay.
It's a big one.
It's a big question. Did everybody hear that question?
No.
Okay. I can't repeat it, it's too long.
Speak to it.
But I
think that mic's on.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can speak to that and it'll get to the essence of the question. And it's 4 minutes, right?
Correct.
Okay, here we go. So right now, Montana is one of many western states that is working on how to come up to current standards with the 9th District Court of Appeals, 2 rulings that basically say that you cannot criminalize homelessness, nor do I think we should. And the other challenge that we have is that when folks are living in campers and sleeping in places occupying basically public rights of way, that you cannot move people on. And we have some challenges with our existing neighborhoods. So that's why the city of Missoula is trying to figure out how do we handle both. So let me say that first and foremost, a city should not criminalize homelessness. At the same time, this 9th District Court of Appeal double ruling puts the city in almost an impossible, not almost, an impossible situation. We're sued by advocacy groups and sued by business groups. Local municipalities don't have enough resources to be able to handle this. So a comprehensive strategy to help houseless people find a path towards stability has to be in place. The ordinance that's in place right now that would bring us into compliance with the 9th District basically stipulates where people cannot sleep. But the reason that the city can do that is because we have the Johnson Street Emergency Shelter. But the reality is that we have some folks that will not go into shelter or may be shelter resistant. And so we have to figure out another way for where people can go. If you can't be here, where else can you go? And this will be, I will say that the number of folks that are houseless will always be a moving target, and it has been in our community. It's not going to be something, and I'm sorry to burst a bubble here, but I think everybody realizes this, that we're not going to solve this overnight. This is going to be an issue that we're going to be living with. When you think that the housing, the rising cost of rent and the rising cost of home ownership is the largest factor to causing houselessness. Now, we have major issues, obviously, with underfunding mental and behavioral health care and access to substance abuse. As a city, we need to have a multi-pronged approach to this. The organization that I'm the executive director of, we just opened Blue Heron Place, 30 permanent supportive homes for folks that are chronically homeless. That is the proven method in the United States to solve long-term homelessness. That is one method. And we actually have all 23 of the 30 homes actually occupied. All 30 are basically already called for. But we're going to need a number of different solutions for all of the different kinds of folks that are facing homelessness. Yesterday when I was at the YWCA luncheon, they cited yet again that homeless families are the #1 women that are fleeing domestic violence situations are the highest rate of families experiencing homelessness. It's an issue in our community where you can see how these things are interrelated and interconnected, because when folks don't have somewhere to escape to, they stay with their abuser. So we need to make sure that we are finding both shelters, temporary and then permanent housing opportunities. And when I say that we need a comprehensive plan, it is being able to, for example, if we have a sanctioned camp spot, which I know we've tried in the past and it was not successful, that does not mean that we shouldn't try it again. We need to learn from what we tried in the past when we had an approved campsite, evaluate what did not work, and then have an opportunity for folks to have bathrooms, have garbage removal, a place for sharps, a place for needles, because needles are showing up in people's alleys and backyards. I talked to a 65-year-old woman last night, and she expressed her concern living right down from Johnson Street, but she is a social worker and understands the challenge, and at the same time, it's the compassionate, conflicted care that we all recognize. Thank you.
Your timing was really good. You know, I said prior to being on council, I was commissioner on the Missoula Housing Authority, and I've told this story before, and we've done so many of these that Andrea might get sick of hearing some of these stories because we talk about the same things. But I was in the grocery store and I ran into an employee of the Housing Authority, and they were really excited to tell me that one of the projects that had come through that Housing Authority board while I was on it had opened, and they had just moved 2 families in. But what he was excited to tell me about was that both of those families were living in their cars, and they were able to move into that housing. And I lead with that because I think sometimes it's easy to get lost in all the bad news and the struggles and the issues that we do face. But we have to we do need to take time to recognize that this community is doing good things around this issue as well. There are 400 permanently affordable apartments opening up this year. Those are absolutely making an impact. One of the frustrations I have in the year and a half or so I've been on council is, for too long when this issue is discussed, it's discussed as one group, as if everybody who's homeless, all 500 plus Missoulians who are homeless, are the same group of people with the same issues, the same shortcomings, the same struggles, and it's just simply not the case. I was at the YWCA luncheon yesterday as well, and there are so many great community partners, such as the YWCA, who opened the Metal Art facility a few years ago, that not only serves for people fleeing domestic abuse, but also 1/2 of it is for homeless families. And I think that we need to evaluate what in our community is working and find ways to shift resources to do more of that and away from things that maybe aren't working as much. I believe that if we can start focusing on groups as more specific to what their needs are, it is going to make it easier for us to address some of our bigger problems. The face of homelessness in Missoula is actually less than 1/3 of the population of homeless in Missoula, and yet I think that's the group that we hear a lot about. That's what the City Council gets constant comments about. And I will refer to part of our homeless issue, which is not limited to just Missoula. It's a nationwide problem, but more or less it's an unfunded mandate, because the federal government and then the state government are failing in their responsibilities to protect humans and their basic rights, and it's falling to local governments who have no business being in the business of mental health care or substance use and abuse prevention and things of that nature. So we need to figure out how we deal with those realities and meet people where they're at. One of the things I'd like to see us in that population that's maybe a little bit more of the face is work with our police force, and that may seem a little bit unconventional in kind of the current conversation, but one of the things I've found that anytime I've ridden along with our police officers, many of them have built relationships with folks in this community and actually know what their struggles and problems are. So if we could put 1 or 2 officers on a beat where they're actually interacting with those people, not in a punitive way where they're issuing tickets or citations, but more like, hey, you know what the expectations here are, but how can we get you to where you're going? How can we try and avoid some of these problems? I think that can make a real difference, while at the same time working with all of our partners to build some of the wraparound housing services and the things that we need to really make a difference, because it's not as simple as our friends on Talkback like to say when they call in when we're on it, that just tell people not to be homeless. That just doesn't work.
Thank you very much. It was, like I said, a doozy of a question, and you both handled it very well. If you don't mind, can I call an audible real quick? Because see, I've got my papers in a row, and I discovered, as I should have known, that we have one more question for you. And Nico would like to ask it. Great. Go for it.
Lack of affordable housing is a concern for many Missoulians. Assuming you are elected, please tell us what practical solutions you will direct the city to pursue to address the current issues around housing.
And just before we begin, I'd like to reiterate that we're going back to the 2-minute format because obviously this one's a lot shorter, but just in case.
Which is really unfortunate, because I think both of us could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, I know.
This is our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, it's my turn to go.
Yeah, you're up.
There's no one solution to housing, and a lot of people try and break it down to simple things, but it's not simple. We need to do We need to be intentional in things like subsidizing low-income housing where we can. We need to make sure that we're taking our most vulnerable people out of the housing market, where we talked about the 400 permanently affordable units that have opened the past year. Things like that need to be part of our solution. At the same time, the city is undertaking a code reform process right now where we are looking at every code that touches subdivision, building, permits, and kind of evaluating it for why does it exist, how does it fit into state law, is it actually helping, or does it harken back to some era of control where we were trying to protect neighborhoods and keep people out and things that really shouldn't be in zoning. And so I think that where it really starts is instead of just having talk about affordable housing be words, but we need to commit to actions. And we've started to do that a little bit on council with what the state legislature did, but I'm committed to creating a mayor's council on housing from day one and identifying what those roadblocks are and figuring out how we can cut out the unnecessary things that are blocking building housing for not only people who qualify for subsidized, but people who will never qualify for a subsidy, but work here and nonetheless can't afford to live here.
All right, well done, under the 2 minutes, good job. Thank you, yeah, right? So the job of the city often is to create the foundation by which private and public partners can help, can react, can build. The city, through its code reform and growth policy update and updating its permitting process, can create that foundation by which there are more opportunities to build in different places, build more inexpensively. That is going to help the larger spectrum. At any point, even when there are high-end homes built, there is relief eventually. Right now, our rental market is pressurized because people cannot leave the rental market into the home ownership. The city has a housing plan in place. That housing plan, I was happy to sit on the steering committee and get that housing plan in place. We've done some great things, but there's a lot more that we can do. And one of the things that I believe we need to be really explicit about, because we have really turned a corner in Missoula, we need to start doing some things that resort communities have done. Right here in Montana, Big Sky has done a project where they partnered specifically with Habitat for Humanity and created a land trust for teachers. I've had a group of teachers, the Teachers Union, approach me to talk about the fact that we are losing so many educators and employers in the school system because they can't afford to live here. They want to buy a home, they want to settle down, so they're moving to other places. If we can have an opportunity where we can explicitly take our resources at the city level, through our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, work with our private partners to really show the opportunity to impact some of our workforce infrastructure. That is one example of something that we can do in the immediate. It's not the total solution, but it's one thing that we can do to demonstrate how a municipal government can partner with private partners to keep some permanent affordability, in particular for an employee base that really impacts the greater part of our community.
Thank you both very much. It's not often that we get to hear from people with so much experience on the subject, and we really appreciate you taking the time tonight to come and talk to us here. Final closing remarks will be offered by the MontPIRG treasurer, Mr. Liam Edwards, who's going to come up and tell us some stuff.
Are these even working anymore?
It's hard telling.
I have such a loud voice, it works anyway.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you so much everyone for being here. Big thanks to the candidates. You really are leading the charge in this community fight, so we really appreciate everything you do for us, our audience, MCAT for being here and streaming the event, our MontPIRG members, the American Constitution Society, the Bar Association, I have a lot of thanks, and our brave moderators, these three gentlemen right in front of me. Let's remember the dialogue continues after night, and let's enjoy some refreshments, some cookies, some hot chocolate, and some apple cider to finish off the night. Also, there's a bear alert. So don't run into the bear on campus. I don't know where it is right now, but I can let you guys know where it is.
We should make sure to give a round of applause for our mayoral.